So you have been trying all of these manifestation techniques from Dr. Joe Dispenza, Neville Goddard. You have been putting in the work to reprogram your subconscious mind. You have been doing SATs, putting in hours and hours of work, affirming, but it just doesn't seem to work. If this is how you're feeling right now, it might be because of what's going on in your mind during the rest of the day. If you're very committed to our manifestation practices, we are probably going to put in somewhere between half an hour to an hour of our time because of our busy lives, but that still leaves 15 hours of waking time, and it's crucially important what we do with our minds during that period. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Overcome Yourself podcast, and in today's episode I'm going to share with you 5 mental habits that are going to block your manifestation constantly without you even realizing them. But do not despair, because I'm going to share them with you and you're going to know about them, and we're going to become more conscious of them. And as we bring our light of awareness to these mental patterns, they're eventually going to dissolve. If you're interested in one versus the other, I'll leave timestamps in the video so that you can be more efficient with your time when watching the video. That said, let's get started. I should have had more money by now. I should have had a family by now. I should look better. I should have been promoted by now. If you find yourself talking to yourself like this, you have a tendency of getting trapped in what the Buddhist would call the comparing mind. And again, no shame and condemnation. This makes perfect sense because most of us are taught this not very helpful mental pattern very early in our childhood through our schooling system and our families. As a society, we seem to think that this is an effective way of making progress, which couldn't be further from the truth. So comparison usually leads to a sense of shame and guilt, which is anything but the essence of manifesting. In manifesting, we're about living the good life, experiencing positive emotions, and making life these elevated experiences while moving towards our goals. And the reason for that is being in energetic alignment makes our lives pleasurable and draws in opportunities and makes people's lives around us better as well. Comparison gets in the way of that in more than a few ways. Like I mentioned before, you experience a lot of shame and guilt, and as you do that, or should I say as we do that, we try to get away from those emotions and engage in behaviors that take away from the quality of our lives. For some people, this goes as far as to engaging in addictive behaviors like watching pornography or playing excessive video games just so that they can avoid feeling that shame, that sense of shame and guilt. Another way we respond to comparison is by trying to rush to the end goal. So we lose any connection to the process. We become frustrated, impatient when the outcomes don't manifest fast enough, whatever that means. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that all of these mental patterns are not actually very helpful. So if you think about manifestation, it's a very different way of moving towards your goal. If you consider teachings like reality transurfing or the teachings of Neville Goddard, it's the process of aligning yourself towards your definite chief aim and then let your subconscious and your nervous system take over and point you towards the right direction. It's executing from a place of flow instead of this grinding and hustling model that a lot of society seems to champion. And the reason for that is because it's not very scalable and leads to burnout. And one of the core drivers of that mindset is this habit of constantly comparing ourselves against other people. But here's the kicker though. Comparison as a concept doesn't really make any sense. Why? Because all of us come from different backgrounds. Someone who grew up in a very privileged society in North America will have a very different set of life experiences that will make them behave in a certain way, and they will have access to certain opportunities that someone who has grown up in a very conservative and developing economy where people are constantly in fight or flight mode. The later one in that comparison is me. As I moved to North America, I constantly found myself comparing myself to people who grew up here and as such had, I don't want to say advantages, but we had common goals and they were in a better position to achieve those goals faster. And I would get very frustrated around that, and I would beat myself up. And after getting myself out of severe depression, having 2 six-figure jobs in North America, achieving my dream body, and building the social life for myself that I have always dreamed of, I can assure you that it is not the best thing to do. It's just gonna get in your way. What do we do about it though? Of course, there are techniques like subconscious mind reprogramming, affirmations, and visualizations, and you can do a lot of cognitive behavioral techniques, which we will go into further details on this channel later. But to keep this video short, I just want to highlight the most important starting point, that is to bring awareness to these thoughts and recognize that they are not as helpful as you have been made to believe. Also, note that human worth is a given. It is not a function of your material achievements. Neville says in Power of Awareness that there is only one consciousness. What that means is we are individual manifestations of this one consciousness, which is the great I am. And if that is a paradigm that you buy into, comparison as a notion just doesn't make sense. On to the next one. Well, the second mental habit that I have for you guys is this tendency to constantly wonder whether your manifestation is here, or when is it gonna be here, if it's gonna be here fast enough. All these kind of ideas which focuses excessively on the future instead of being immersed in the present moment, in the process of moving towards your goal. This reminds me of a session that I had recently with my mentor, who has a YouTube channel called Sebastian Manifests, by the way, which I'm gonna link in the description. Amazing content. Make sure you check that out. And I was complaining to him about how there is no guarantee of result when it comes to creating content, and that gets in the way of me tapping into flow and providing value for you guys. And he responded saying, do you think Arnold Schwarzenegger was obsessing over whether this bicep curl is going to lead to him winning the championship? And I think that's a great metaphor to highlight what this tendency of constantly shoulder checking to see if the process is working or if the manifestation here does to us. It just takes away from our ability to be present with the task in hand, which again in turn gets in the way of us achieving flow and in us staying in the state of wish fulfilled and making the whole journey fun. Vadim Zeland talks about this in reality transurfing as well. Just get rid of the habit of wondering whether the thing is gonna work or not. Just focus the entirety of your energy towards moving towards your goal, and all the anxiety or the excess balance, as you'd call it in reality transurfing terms, it's gonna dissipate in action, and it creates momentum. You feel good, and as we feel better and better by taking action, it creates this feedback loop between us taking action and our nervous system that propels us towards taking more action. And if we show up to our highest capacity, whatever that is on that day, you don't have to be perfect every day. Opportunities open up, bridge of incidences occur, but none of that can happen if we are hyper vigilant and are constantly obsessing about the outcome and are taken away from the present moment. Third, and the funniest one, it is only a manifestation if I don't have to take action. So many conversations on YouTube about this. And I would warn you to listen to the teachings of people who tell you that you don't have to take any action. And a lot of good YouTubers, what they would do is they would make a clickbaity title saying you don't have to take any action, and then somehow end up with $1 million or your SP. And then in the video, they're gonna tell you how you actually have to take action. And it's the mode of taking action that's just different. If you think you are gonna just keep eating potato chips on your couch and opportunities are gonna land on your lap, unfortunately, that's not how it works. Neville says between the assumption and the fulfillment of the desire, we're supposed to do nothing. Yes, he does, but that nothing is not nothing. There's a chapter in Power of Awareness called Be Ye Doers, where he is talking about how staying in the feeling of wish fulfilled should make you move towards your goal. But if you are consciously preventing yourself from that movement, and that could be because of many reasons. That could be because you have limiting beliefs, you have anxiety, and you're experiencing these very difficult sensations in your body. Just doing the inner work is not gonna be enough, at least in the beginning. Because action in the material world and our internal world, there is a psychodynamic loop. I just threw in a little term from hypnosis there. That sounds fancy. So, back to the point. So, taking action in life and our internal world, there's a psychodynamic loop between those two. The more action you take, the more alignment you find, and the more inner work you do, taking action becomes easier and easier. But either way, action has to happen. If you are to meet your SP, you should expose yourself to situations where there is potential for meeting people of the opposite sex. If you want clients for your business, you need to do marketing. That could mean either making yourself an online presence or reaching out directly to your customers, whatever that means. How are people even gonna find you? And there is no success without people being involved in one degree or another. And that unfortunately doesn't happen when we are having Doritos on our couches watching Netflix. So just because manifestation is a more spiritual take towards creating your desired reality doesn't mean that it should be devoid of action. Sometimes things do happen without you least expecting them, but oftentimes if you try to make sense of them in retrospect, what you see is you took a series of decisions that led you to be at that place at that time. But looking forward, you couldn't have made sense to it that way. For example, as you put in the work, what often happens is you develop a hunch. And there is solid scientific basis behind this. There's this part of the brain that's called the reticular activation system, which decides what information in our surroundings to pay attention to versus what's not. And as you engage with people more and more, you develop this ability to recognize who is a potential fit versus who is not. In short, it is your reticular activation system that's getting trained. And what then happens is connections and opportunities pop out of nowhere or with very little effort, which Goddard would call a bridge of incidents unfolding. But see, all of that is happening because we are taking action. On to number 4, having too many desires. So it's not that there's anything particularly wrong with this. Desire is a very spiritual thing, and desire is what keeps the world going. But if we have too many desires and we can't focus our minds towards achieving one at a time, that makes it very hard to make meaningful progress towards any of them. In Power of Awareness, Neville talks about how it is absolutely crucial that we hold the state of the wish fulfilled or the imaginal act in our mind steadily for a prolonged period of time. And there are good reasons for this, because ideas flow from there. Action flows effortlessly from there, as I was mentioning before. And if we are constantly distracted by too many desires, and thanks to modern technology, there is no shortage of that these days, we cannot get into that state of focus from which that flow can happen. Being able to focus on something for prolonged periods of time has always been and always will be one of the most important fundamentals for manifestation. It could seem from Instagram and social media that it is very easy to be successful in many areas of your life all at the same time, but this is an illusion. Yes, there are people out there who are very, very successful. They have the dream body, living their dream life in some villa out there in Bali, making tens of thousands of dollars a month, but one, these people probably have been at it for many, many years, and second of all, there probably was one core component that they focused on building first, from which success in the remaining areas of their lives just naturally followed. For example, someone who has good financial stability can afford trainers that someone who is not in a financially good place would be able to. Now, a good trainer with a good compatibility can make you achieve your fitness goals much faster than having no trainer at all. So now you have the health and the wealth pillars sorted out. People naturally gravitate towards you because you have better energy, because your body is in such good shape, because you're financially well off, you have access to quality people. There is another problem with having too many desires. So if you use your progress in multiple desires for success, you'll often find yourself not making substantial progress in any of them, which would lead to frustration and impatience, which would again get in the way of experiencing more flow and just enjoying the journey as we move towards our manifestations. And then there is the problem of being double-minded. As Neville says in Power of Awareness, the double-minded man is unstable in all sorts of ways. So what he's essentially talking about is focus being scattered and not being able to hold the state of the imaginal act steadily in our consciousness. In short, not being able to focus. There is a great book called The One Thing by Gary Keller where he extensively dives deep into this topic. Give that book a shot if you think this is something that you struggle with. So the fifth and the final habit that gets in the way of our manifestations is taking this manifestation business way too seriously. It is more insidious than you think, because when we take life too seriously, we become tense. We operate from this place of tightness. Our nervous system is in this fight or flight mode. The system is overwhelmed with adrenaline and cortisol, and that gets in the way of us experiencing more flow. What happens when we have less flow? Things just become more difficult. Ideas don't flow as effortlessly, and we have to put in much more effort or exert a lot more willpower to get us moving. And if you are practicing staying in the state of wish fulfilled, finding that feeling of love and gratitude in your body, you know how good it feels compared to when we are all tightened up and are obsessing about the outcome and experiencing this sense of frustration and impatience. It just doesn't feel good, does it? So pay attention to what's going on in your physiology as you get through the day. You will notice that there's a loop between your thoughts and feelings. Negative thoughts are going to produce constriction and tightness in the body, and vice versa. If you are tensing up without even not knowing what is it that's making you tense up, you will see a negative storyline proliferating, and then that feeds into the feedback loop, and it just keeps getting worse from there. And when that happens, you know what to do. It is is time to practice some good old-fashioned letting go. I have a whole video on that on this channel based on the works of Michael Singer. Make sure to give that a shot. I think you'll find it helpful. So those were the mental habits that I wanted to share with you that I have found to be huge manifestation blockers. I hope you found them helpful, and if you did, you know what to do. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Ciao.